Hello, Carl.
Oh my God.
It's been too long that I've actually seen you.
This is so much fun.
This is awesome.
Oh my goodness. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I am really good. I just got back from your lovely city.
I was just gonna say, are you feeling good after your marathon, half marathon?
Yeah, we did the marathon and Will pushed me beyond my wildest dreams of what I could do. And I'm sure you're familiar.
Yes, I know what that
And
feels like.
thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So much fun. And when we were looking at members to spotlight, it was like I was thinking back to when we met, which was
Yeah,
Palm Springs, I'm pretty sure.
it was Palm
I
Springs.
think it was that second owner camp.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I met Will in the first one. I think I did. And then I was like, oh, there's somebody who gets stuff done.
I help bring those crazy ideas to life.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
just for everybody who's going to be watching, give a little backstory. And let's go back to when maybe you were just kind of starting to figure out what you wanted to do. Maybe it's high school,
Yeah.
Crystal. Like,
Ooh.
what were you thinking when you were getting ready to come out of high school that you were going to do with your life?
I wanted to be a Spanish teacher.
Yeah.
And I had wanted to be a teacher, I think, since I was in elementary school, honed in on wanting to be a Spanish teacher in high school. And that's what I went to college for originally, pivoted, but that was my original was I'm being a teacher.
Spanish teacher. And so I
Spanish
did
teacher.
see that you graduated with a degree in Spanish. And I was just
Yeah.
like, how do you get here? Like, how do you go from Spanish
Yeah.
to SEO? Like,
Yeah.
what was that little experience?
It was the I think what got me there was I realized when I was a freshman in college that I was teaching in an after school program so I went to Kutztown University in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and was teaching in Reading, Pennsylvania in an after school program, Spanish program. And I was doing that for the whole year and I was bored. And I realized ooh, I'm not one to sit still. That I can't make a career out of teaching. I love teaching, coaching, all of those things, but doing this day in and day out, I can't see this being my forever thing. So I needed to pivot. But I love learning about cultures and languages, and Spain just had this place in my heart from having a really good teacher in middle school through high school. So I think through a little soul searching and maybe a little nudging from my parents, international business was the route that I ended up taking as my major, with minor
Oh,
underneath of that.
okay.
So that's really how I got into the business world. And then how I fell into this digital SEO world. It just happened. I really, graduating from college, I just wanted to find a role where I could leverage my Spanish and my international business background. I had just returned from studying abroad in Spain. And it was just I needed to have that in my life. And so the first role that I found that brought that all to life for me was with a really small digital agency in Baltimore, Maryland, close to where I'm from. And the owner was originally from Spain, had come here to get her MBA, stayed, launched an agency. And so I was able to bring all of those pieces of my world together. We did a lot of business in Spain. Her sister worked with us, and so I had to speak Spanish to her all the time. We had
Okay.
acquired a small agency in Mexico City about a year in. So I had to leverage all of my Spanish, and that's where I really started to get my feet under me with digital marketing at the time. More on actually the media side than SEO side, but
Okay.
that was my first jump into what is this online marketing stuff.
So you go international business. You do
Yeah.
kind of correct. You can, hey, maybe go over here. You can have a
Yeah.
career. It won't, teaching is awesome, but let's make sure you're okay, which
Yeah.
is sad in our country that that's the
I
way it
know.
is. But so you do that when you get out of international business and then you go into a small web shop, right? A
Yeah.
digital shop. Was there any kind of misaligned expectations of you've studied international business and now you're in this little kind of glorious but very
Yeah.
different space? What was that like for you? Did you think this is it, or did you think, okay?
It was it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, because I think in international, like studying it in undergrad, it is, it's really broad, right? And I had this, like, to your point, I was like in this little tiny world. What I did like about it though, and what was really great was a lot of our clients, again, were in the EU. And so I was working with a lot of international clients who had a global footprint. And that was really exciting. And then we also had a focus on like the US Hispanic market, which was just a very different type of client to have. So I was able to live into some of it, but not from maybe a whole lot of like different cultures brought into the organization, right? We were a team of like 6. It was super, super small. But there still were some culture differences. And I will say, like, the owner of that agency, she really propelled my career. And I'm still very much friendly with her. And we still keep in touch. In my early Seer days, she came to a couple of our events. But ultimately, I knew it was time to move on from there because there were just some differences in how she approached business. And I don't know if that was like her personal style or if it maybe was bringing some of her culture and background into it.
Right.
And what I believed was the right way to operate and run in a business. And so ultimately I was like, you know what? I've learned a ton here. She gave me so much runway, more than she probably should have, to be honest. And I was like, I think I've learned enough and I should probably take what I've learned and take it, help me take it to the next level.
There you go. And so do you go straight from there to Seer?
I did.
Okay, and realize you got to Seer about 14 years ago, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it was
Back
a
in 2007.
totally different company at the time,
Very
I would
different.
imagine.
Yes.
So what was that like going from your first job going into Seer, where you've got this almost cult of personality that's brewing with Will?
Yeah.
And so how many people were there? What was it like? What were you doing?
There were maybe 5 people.
Mm,
I purposely sought out smaller companies.
okay.
As much as I appreciate and love operations and process, I equally rebel against them, I think.
You, my
Cheers to
friend.
that,
To
right?
you, my friend.
So much so, a little sidetrack here, that in college, I had to work as well to pay for my school and all my stuff I needed for school. And so I had always been a server in high school when I was working. So I was like, yep, this is an easy job. So I applied for a whole bunch of places, and Applebee's was one of the first places to call me. So I went in. I lasted on the job for 1 hour because I hated their rules. I was like, this is dumb. I'm not doing this. And so I just took off my apron, handed it to the manager, and he could not understand what I was doing. He's like, you've been here an hour. I'm like, yeah, this is just not going to work out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I purposely sought small companies, and I could just feel the passion. And I paid attention, to how Will was with me when it was just he and I in the room, how he talked, what he said, why he explained certain things, and then how the dynamics were when really the rest of the company then came into the room, and nothing changed, right? And so like that was for me like, okay, this is the type of company I can be part of. I can appreciate. I definitely knew I was in for something unique because I also interviewed, which I still like say this to Will to this day, in like literally the basement of like a pretty rundown building. And it was like dingy, like a light hanging in the middle of the room. So I think, I don't know if that was like a purposeful test or not of like, can you hang in this kind of company? But I rolled with it.
I could see you going, yeah, mom and dad, it's great. No, I can't send photos of the office. I apologize. My camera's broken. Yeah, no, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So then you get there. What are you doing? What is the role that you have when you first get to Seer?
I came in as an SEO account manager.
Okay.
And that's really at the time, that's Will's bread and butter and what he is known for. And that's really the focus of Seer at the time. I think at the time we had 1 or 2 clients, handful of clients that we were doing a little bit of paid search for. But that was also, newer at the time and wasn't like a core offering of Seer. So came in SEO manager, got put on accounts, really day one. even before I started, Will would like send me emails like, you're kicking this client off. So like do some research before you get here. And I'm like, okay.
So you get there, fast forward a little bit. How quickly does the company grow? And at what point in your career do you end up at owner camp in Palm Springs and we say hello for the first time? Like, how long had you been at Seer?
Let me think. So that was you know
Pretty
what?
early?
That was about not quite midway, but almost midway in my tenure at Seer. Because I think that was back in 2012.
Yeah, it was late 2012 or early 2013. You're right. Yeah, yeah.
The funny story, and you probably don't know this, I had to come clean to Will on that trip that I was expecting my first child because I was super, super, super sick. And I was like, I got to tell you this because like, one, I'm going to be sick on this trip and we're traveling together. And like, two, I have a feeling there's going to be some happy hours and like, I can't partake. So yeah, fun fact of that owner camp that I was super sick, and welcoming my first little guy. So
there you go. So
yeah.
what was it like for you suddenly sitting at a table with other people who were building companies and doing that sort of thing? Like, what did you think?
I loved it, because you had asked like, where were we in growth and how fast did that happen? The growth has always been very organic, very purposeful for us. And early days, Will used to say, you know, we're not getting past 10 and then 15 and then 25. And at some point I was like, okay, let's talk about like why we're choosing to grow, right? Let's not worry about the number anymore. Let's talk about what is the reason we're growing? Are we open to growth? Right. And what does that look like? When would we not grow? You know, on the alternative side, what would stop us from wanting to grow? And so being in that group with others that were growing was so, I think, enlightening and helpful from we're not the only ones going through this, right? Like growth comes with pains. There's a lot of success and a lot of great things that come with growth, but there's also a lot of growing pains and challenges and that aren't always talked about, right? And so you can sometimes feel like you're the only one dealing with these things or that like you're getting it all wrong. And then you come into this room and you're like, I'm not the only one who's getting this wrong. This is lovely, right? Or
like
you come
we're all doing it wrong. We're doing it wrong together.
Yes. Or you're like, oh my gosh, you've already been there. Like, let me learn from you, right? Because you are doing things right now. And like, how did you get to that point? And like, so I was a sponge, you know, I was early in helping grow this company. And so for me, it was just so impactful to hear from others and be able to learn from others that had taken this route before we did, to just absorb and learn from and you know, write some nuggets down and come back and be like, wait a second, they said this, let's try that instead.
Let's see how that goes. One, to your point, sometimes it is kind of just a confirmation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, this is hard.
Yeah.
This stuff is hard. It's not that I'm bad at it. It's just really hard.
Yeah.
And then you got that affirmation part, which is like, oh, we're okay. We're good.
Yeah.
But then also the collaboration, right? Now I'm writing some really horrible song. I don't know what's going on. Confirmation, affirmation, collaboration. But the collaboration part, I mean, I think that's what's glorious is that even though you got back, and I want to hear what that was like coming back, and then you're gonna have the families going, and but then we stay in touch. I mean, this is the amazing thing is that I think we see you again in Minnesota.
Yes.
I think you come back in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
But you go back home. You're gonna have a baby now. Mm-hmm. And at that point, would you say that? I mean, was there any kind of real structure in Seer, or was it fairly flat?
We were really flat then. Very, very flat. Intentionally, right? And I think we always had, up until that point, everyone's business cards said associate, including Will. And that was intentional in that we wanted to build the company that didn't care about title or tenure or whatever predisposed idea somebody might have because of those things, and just say like, we're all really, really talented. It takes every single one of us to be successful for our company and our clients and each other. So don't worry about somebody's title or where they are in the hierarchy, right? Because we all contribute. And so that was really purposeful for us to be like this very flat organization. Yes, there were certain things that Will was deciding, or other leaders, myself, or some other like leads we had at the time were responsible for, but it was very intentional that we generally operated pretty flat.
So I'm imagining based on where you were in the company's life cycle, that you were going to be the first employee that had a major leave and a
Yeah.
major life change,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
how does that happen? What process was it? Just a team effort? Everybody was like, all right, this is what we'll do. We'll split this up. We'll get it. You go, you go. So how did that happen?
Yeah. So I was the first person to take a maternity leave. So it's also interesting, like planning your own leave. And we didn't have an HR person, right? Like that was Will and I. So
Yeah. So now you got to do it.
I had to do it. And so my approach was I did a whole bunch of research, right? Talked to friends. I talked to like our broker at the time, our health insurance broker, like what is typical of a company? Like, I don't even know where to start on this thing, right? So like asked people and came back to Will and said, hey, what I'm hearing out there is like 12 weeks is about typical. Here's what I'll do. I'll prep my whole thing. I'll build my plan. I'll come back. This is what I need. I'll need to be able to like leave and pump when I come back. But like otherwise, I'll be back in 12 weeks. And Will was like, sounds great. And like, Will, he's like, I don't need the details. Sounds wonderful. Like, go do that.
I'll see you when you get here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really, I built a transition plan and said like, Will, like, here's where I need you to plug in because I was running I had built and was running our paid search team at the time and then helping Will with some other just overarching business things. So I told Will like where I needed him to plug in. I groomed a few folks on my team to step into my role and like share the responsibility while I was out and ask Will basically like, I need you to just point them in the right direction, right? Give them the support and feedback they need along the way. And then that was really it, and that actually was like served as like the starting point. What I also didn't do was tell Will that we were small at the time, sub 50 people, right? And so I didn't ask for that leave to be paid. And I didn't feel like the organization owed that to me, right? Because that's just like, that's not your role, Will. Like I'm choosing to have this family. So like I just took leave as FMLA. And I didn't tell Will that. And that's just how, I think it's unique in that's how like I've always operated. And it was like, this is on me. I'll figure this out. Right. But to Will, how Will operates is when he found that out, he was like, what is wrong with you? Like pay that. So then for the next person, we made sure that there was a paid leave as part of a parental leave.
Yeah. So what you just brought up is so amazing because, and this comparison is totally not equal on any level. It's kind of like writing your own bio, right?
Yeah.
You're writing your own parental leave,
Yeah.
and you want it to be fair, but you also don't want to take advantage. So you're
Totally.
trying to do this, but isn't that great? And I think this is the thing. You're setting it up so the next person you can say, hey, well, that's what I got, right?
Yeah.
But then somebody like Will steps in and goes, no. I see, and I appreciate that because I think, and this is for teams working together, whatever. You don't want there to ever be a thing with somebody that's great on the team that it just takes a tiny little irritation to grow into a full blown, just disappointment.
Yeah.
So, well, so you come back after the 12 weeks, and what's that like?
I don't even remember. I'm sure
Tell
it
me
was
to
a
shut up
blur.
if I'm getting too personal.
No, it's totally fine. But honestly, it was a blur. What's really interesting about coming back was Will and I had always talked about before I went out that at some point he wanted me to move out of running our paid division and truly step into president role, ops role, whatever, a larger role across the organization as like my full-time thing, not a portion of my time. And so in Will's style, I come back from leave and he's like, this is the perfect time because you already groomed people to take on your role. So like take the president role while you're back. And I'm like, woo, all right. Like I'm figuring out how to be a new mom. I'm having this like new role to figure out. So I remember it was a lot, but it worked, you figure it out.
And I think you were president when you came to Minneapolis.
Yes, I was.
Pretty sure you were. So now, and there were a lot of people in those early owner camps who came back later with much more responsibility in their roles.
Yeah.
And so you were definitely, even though you probably had a similar responsibility, the organization grew so much.
Absolutely, it did.
And now you've got all this responsibility. You're thinking about everybody's mortgages, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's such I hate to say it, but it's a nightmare a little bit, right? You're like so worried about everybody. So what happens when you come back to owner camp? Like, what is that compared to the first time?
Yeah, so that was the first trip that my little guy came with us on. So I wasn't ready as a new mom to leave him at all. So my
Right.
husband like took some leave and he came with. So that was fun. The organization was definitely bigger, right? We had grown a bunch.
Yeah.
And so I remember coming back the next time in, and one, I think I felt like I was able to contribute more the second time around. And share my own experiences to maybe
Yeah.
help somebody else take a nugget away, right? Because we had gone through a different growth spurt and cycle within that time span. And even though that was what, maybe 2 years of a difference, like we had grown a bunch and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things we tried and failed. And we had just started building out our executive team. So we had our first like hire that was leading finance and our first hire that was leading some operations things, our first hire on the people operations side of the business. So like we were starting to do some different things that we had not the last time I was there. And I think the other piece then was I was focused then more learning wise from a, how do we scale this thing? Like, how do we, I can tell we're on this growth path, like we're past saying we're going to get to a certain head count and then stop. So like, how do I continue to position the company to grow successfully? So I think what I was seeking from it changed as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I do remember that without a doubt. You took charge a couple of times. Like you were, I mean, and I remember the first one I went to, I was just like, I don't know what we're doing. I'm just going to tell you what I do. You're going to look at me crazy. I'm going to say, I'm sorry, but this is what we do. But that second one, I do remember. And also, Sear was gaining enough traction and reputation. I think we were all taking notice, right? Like everybody was doing well,
Yeah.
but, and maybe part of it's the space, a lot of it's the attitude and the
Yeah.
appreciation of humans and the way that
Yeah.
it's going. So you had a great horse to ride in on, you know? So we go through Minneapolis, um, and then you go back, and so kind of bring us up to now, because I know you've gone through several different roles. I know
Yeah.
Sear has changed a tremendous number of times. I've
Yeah.
fallen in love with Larry Waddell, by the way.
Yeah. He's the
What
best.
a great person.
Yes.
So as you move forward, at first, I do want to ask one question before we get there. How do you find all these amazing people? When Will and I were doing the run, and I apologize, I don't want to get his name wrong. I think it was Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ran up and he was running with us, and Will had to veer off for a little bit. And I was talking with him, and I was like, "One, there's another one. It's
Yeah.
just not fair. Like you're
Yeah.
just getting all the best people. What do you think it is that attracts such great people to Sear?"
Um, Such a good question. And Adam's awesome, by the way. He's been with us for about 13 years. So he's
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
been with us a long time. But I would say one is that we really try to be transparent as an organization and truly share, who we are and what we're about. And that, and then live into it, right? So not just
Mhm.
talk about it, but like put the, for lack of a better word, like the social proof out there that backs
Mhm.
up the things that we're saying, the content that's on our site. Like, is there a blog that attaches to that? Is there a
Right.
video that like leans into that? So I think by us being that transparent, and then truly showing, and not that we do everything right, like, nope, nobody does. But we try our best, right, to really show truly how we live into those things. And then so I think that is reciprocated back by the people who join. Like that either resonates with them or it doesn't. But also I'll give, our people team a ton of kudos. Like they really hone in on what is going to make somebody successful at Sear, and know who to continue through a process and not, right? And that's something I think also is really unique in that we've been in a position many, many times, fortunate position to slow down our growth, slow down taking on business because
Yeah.
we won't compromise on who we bring to the team. And so I think that's the other piece of it is if you truly are wanting to build a company of really great, talented folks that
Yeah.
share values and vision and what culture means to them, you have to compromise other areas, right? And so like compromising growth, right? And things
Yeah.
like that to make sure that that's truly the team that you're building.
I think it's so important because we all go through different seasons. And I remember a big mistake I made as an owner was we had a client that was pushing us to hire more people because they had money, time was their problem.
Yeah.
And so I remember at one point I was looking at the company and I went, I don't think I want to be here anymore. I'm not sure I like, we're putting butts in seats and all those horrible
Yeah.
sayings. So uh, mad respect that y'all were able to do that and to slow down. So tell us a little bit about now, like how big is Seer and what are you doing? Like, what's your
Yeah.
role?
We are at around 210 folks, full time. We've got some, we've expanded to have some contractors and some partners in different countries that bring a different skill set to the team that we need, and we hadn't in the past. Still very much focused, right, on helping us as a company truly live into our values, and to strive to live into our vision, right, of being a company that is having a really good impact and making a mark on our communities, our team, our clients. And that takes like a shape of all kinds of things. I'll be working on people stuff and then I'll work on finance things. It's all a balance, right? Everything has to come together and work together to continue building and scaling a company. But I think the biggest thing we're working on as well, like shift wise as an organization, how we're structured, is leaning into remote first. That's a big transition for us as an organization.
It's huge. And obviously the pandemic had a lot to do with that for a lot of people.
100%. Yeah,
And I think that little shove was probably really good for the industry.
it was. So I had pushed us to start adopting remote hires a few years back. I think our VP of People Ops had been out on maternity leave, so I was stepping into her role and working with her team. And we were in one of those positions where we had a ton of potential great new clients to work with, but didn't have enough of a talent pipeline to be able to do that. And I remember just saying to the team, like, tell me how many of these roles you could have filled if they just didn't want to live in Philly or San Diego. And it was like 80 something percent. I'm like, this is just silly. Like, how do we start to do this, right? If we're like truly about building a really great team, does that mean that only happens if people like Philly or San Diego? Like, no. So how do we start to live into this? So I've always really pushed us to embrace that. And I will say, this is on me, right? As a leader of the organization, I didn't push hard enough for long enough to make like a more persistent change. Like, we did it, but it was like certain roles only. And looking back, I'm like, I should have just pushed harder, right? So not happy how we got here, obviously, from a pandemic standpoint, but happy that we got here and are fully embracing remote, and the talent that we're able to add to the team, and like just the diverse backgrounds and skill sets and thinking and experience is just so different now. And it adds to your company, right? It adds to the building of your company and the success of your company.
I couldn't agree more. And yes, there are things about being together and you can get people together,
Totally.
but if the core of who your organization is based on geographical location, then you're going to miss out on those great people you're talking about because they might have other things
Absolutely.
going on in their lives that they can't. That's just not
Yeah.
a thing. Or maybe they freaking love Seattle or
Right.
maybe Venezuela. And you know
Yeah.
what? Let them be there. That's amazing. So
Yeah.
what about you? Like, I know you're kind of doing the same stuff, but what's next for you? What do you think you're going to be leading the charge on next?
Yeah. So I would say, I think, coming back from leave, it was a good timing, because you get time to like think, right? And you come back and you've got fresh ideas and fresh perspective. And yes, I was tired, but still had time to think. And I'm really focused. And what I came back to was, we're building an amazing company, an amazing team, and we're trying our best to, I should say, we're trying to do all the right things that we think are right. And the one thing that we haven't done a good job focusing on is removing like the friction out of our team's day to day. Like, we do things that make their day to day lives harder. That makes no sense, right? So I think I came back and just was like, we have to fix this. Like, how do we give our team better guidelines, better tools and technology, streamline them, provide more guidance on what it means to be in a remote world? How do we make sure they can find the information they need versus, spending an hour just trying to understand, how do I even do this task? Because the information's inaccurate. It's over here and not over here. And so that's like the next big thing for us, right? Is continuing to make our team's day at work much easier, remove the friction, and let our team go do the things they're good at doing.
I think that's great. People get worried about structure, but structure, so long as it's not constrictive or
Yeah.
restrictive, I think is great. And so that's amazing. So one last question for you.
Yeah.
All right. So if you didn't go into international business,
Okay.
do you think you would have stuck with teaching, that you would have gone Spanish teacher, or do you think there's
Ooh.
something else that was kind of pulling at you?
I would have done something else still. So I took a brief stint in journalism. I just have enjoyed that. I joined like the university newspaper. I enjoyed that aspect of, so maybe I would have stuck with that. But the teaching thing, like I need more variety in my day to day. And like teachers haven't, especially going through the pandemic, like I'm not saying their jobs are easy. That is not what I mean at all. Just for me, the like, okay, you change classes, but like you're teaching the same lessons. The kids change and the things change, but like the day to day is kind of the same. Like I know I would get bored. So if it wasn't international business, it still would have to be something that is multifaceted. Like I think I'm one of those people, if you give me a couple things to do, like I'll procrastinate and I might not do any of them.
Guilty.
If you give me like 100, I'll do 99 of them.
Having a good
Yeah.
time.
So like I need that in my life. I need to like always be doing something or looking forward to something or having that thing that I need to tackle or stretch myself on.
Well, then I think you landed in the exact right place.
It feels like it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Crystal, thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you for
And thank
having
you
me.
for being such a great part of the community too. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, and an honor to be here. And thank you for all the work that you've done. I mean, seeing the Bureau grow from, the Palm days to now, it's awesome. The organization is really amazing and provides so much value for all of us.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. I'm going to release you back into the wild. That's
Sounds
what I
great.
say.
Take
So
care.
see you. Bye, Crystal.
Bye.